Hello and welcome. I'd like to say it was technical trouble, but really it was pilot error. That is all on me. Welcome to another Friday afternoon here at Go Narrative, where we pick an unsuspecting victim and do a website teardown. Every week, I'm looking at dozens of websites, companies in general, their websites and other things, exploring how folks are trying to connect. And recently, this year, that focus is very much shifted. So I started my career back in at the dawn of time in tech at Intel, one of the OG tech firms. Later, after Intel brought me to the US, I ended up working at Microsoft. And throughout all of that journey of an insane number of messages from hardware to software, partner channel, branding, even F1 at one point, which was super fun, I have constantly been fascinated with the attempts at connecting, right? And all of that led me to where I am today, which is getting really, really focused on how we use this set of narrative tools to do that. And this year, the shift has been from a broader, I don't want to say just corporate. We've got some great corporate clients, but the shift has been from a broader corporate, mid-market, startups, you name it, anybody who's got one of these challenges, shifted from that. And it's shifted down into this focus on startups in Series A who are looking to get to Series B. And one of the reasons why I picked that is because, come on, like, I love tech and AI, machine learning, where we are right now. Like, what a great place to just focus, right? And another part of it is, honestly, it's near and dear to my heart. Even as a communicator, even as somebody who spends their time agonizing, working, going deep to help others get crystal clear, right? How do we crystallize that message? How do we say what you're actually trying to say? And covering all the important stuff, right? Like the core of it, the context of it, the positioning aspect, the technology aspect, the human aspect, all of these parts, right? All of that you need if you're going to connect. And for me, the journey has very much been one, like I said, I love tech. So I've got, like, with pride, I still have on my desk here this patent that I got when I was at Microsoft, right? That's how techie this marketer goes, right? And this is what you get at Microsoft if you, let me get the focus on that guy. This is what you get if you have a patent at Microsoft. You get one of these patent cubes, and it's not uncommon to see engineers with just like whole pyramids of these, right? Because of all the awesome work that they're doing. But for a marketer, that was quite, quite a personal achievement. But it was so true to the core of who I am. It's like obsessed with technology, lost in the details. I mean, I'm lost in the details right now with Home Assistant operating system in my home. Anybody who's dabbled in that space knows that you're never done with your Home Assistant implementation. But right now, I've got a problem with the Zigbee radio, I think it is. Yeah, Zigbee. The Z-Wave is fine. The lighthouse behind me, this light should be on right now, and I could actually go and turn it on, but it should be on when the lights of the office go on because it's got a Zigbee radio in it and all that jazz. But I need to go and re-flash the Zigbee radio because we had a power cut and things went sideways. So I get deep into this stuff and I understand how rich and detailed and how much of a mire that can be, quite frankly. And so when I go out there, like I said, every week, and I'm looking at dozens of companies and what they're trying to say, how they're trying to say it, I am looking at it from this really weird position of somebody who is not just trying to solve any given Rubik's Cube of communication, but somebody who has lived and breathed the technology, right? And that's quite rare. I mean, I'm not the only one, but I tell you what, there's a lot of people that fall into one camp or the other. And the challenge as a founder, like if you're in Series A and you're trying to get to Series B, the challenge is, I see the challenge, right? There's many challenges, Matthew. There's many challenges. One of the challenges when it comes to this communication stuff and the technology stuff is you are really trying to solve this business. And I can also empathize with that, running a small business myself. And so you're looking at, like, how do we solve these problems, right? And the company we're going to look at this week is a really great example of a company that thought they were solving one problem and realized actually they needed to step back and the problem they were solving was a different one. But my point here is it's so easy to get sucked down into the details, into that curse of knowledge, as Chip and Dan Heath coined it, which I just love because I have to admit, I'm the first person, I'll raise my hand, I'll admit I suffer from the curse of knowledge, including with narrative and storytelling. And it's a risk, right? If you're focused on the bits and the pieces and all of the things that make it function, it's very easy to lose sight of what is it that somebody's actually really trying to do. And as a founder, that takes enormous discipline to be able to draw a line under an hour or a half a day or a week and say, next phase, tomorrow, I'm going to be stepping out and away from the product, away from the technology to a degree. And I'm going to be thinking through how we really crystallize what it is that we're trying to say. And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to shift gears like that as human beings. We have a limited amount of energy, and you're using a lot of energy to do all that stuff that you're already doing, right? So I love this stuff because when I'm looking at comments about APIs and containers and Docker and Kubernetes and you name it, right? My heart goes out to the folks who are trying to communicate this stuff. And I've said it before on this stream. It's also about the folks who are trying to put the website together. And in a Series A firm, that might be one marketing person, right? And you're having to catch and block and tackle all of these different requests. I'm trying to make sure the music isn't too loud. Let me know if it is. And you've got a blog that you're trying to get published, or you're trying to get somebody on the team to write so that you can get it up, right? You've maybe got an event that's coming up, and you've got to come up with an event page, or you're going to an event and your CEO is speaking, and you're coming up with some content for the website to connect into that, or you got a new product launch and you're figuring out like, what do we need on the website because of this? Is it a completely different product that we're adding to the portfolio? Is it a V2, a V3? Is it something that's important but is a smaller shift? You're like all of these things constantly flying you, bam, 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 bam. So we just covered like 2 roles that are just bombarded, right? And that founder and somebody in this head of marketing responsible for making sure that the right messages go out. And it is a lot. And I know this from personal experience in the past and personal experience today. So when we look at these websites, trust me, my heart goes out to you. But I don't do these to hurt you. I don't do these to attack you. I don't do these to do anything apart from say, look, this is what this company is putting out on the web. And it may be you one of these days, right? And if you'd like your company done, shoot us a note. gnhelp@gonarrative.com. You can go ahead and put that link up on the screen in our captions. We'll get that up in a second. But you shoot us an email if you want us to pick on your company, because this is also like basically complimentary consulting. So, and that's ultimately how we all approach life, isn't it? We start to learn about how things can be better by seeing examples and social proof, and from that we can then make these decisions to do things differently. And that caption should be coming up any second now. But in all seriousness, if you want to shoot us your company, your website, and ask us to pick on you, we'd be more than happy to. Okay. We're all in this at some point, aren't we? We're in this mire, this swamp, right? That we're trying to, all of this detail that we're trying to somehow find a way to get succinct and to crystallize. And what we do on these is we'll pick up, and I'll share the screen here in a second of the website that we're picking on. And when I do that, you're going to see some of the process that I automatically go through when I start to look at these things. I'm hunting for both sides of the equation, right? I'm hunting for how to talk about this stuff. Yes. But I'm also hunting for the technology and seeking to understand as much as possible. And I'm not, as far as tech's concerned, I'm a mile wide and an inch deep pretty much on communication, narrative, storytelling. It's a little narrower and deeper, of course, but I do know enough to be dangerous, as my Home Assistant operating system, if it could speak, would, I'm sure with great distress, tell you about. And for some reason, I'm thinking about an episode of Rick and Morty where the garage is negotiating with Rick, the AI in the garage that runs the garage for him. And it's making me think of my poor Home Assistant operating system. So anyway, I'm looking at both sides of that, because that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to say, look, here's what you're trying to do. Here's how it's coming across. Is it working? And that's a really tough one, by the way, because is it working for who? Is it working for somebody that already knows they need to buy this stuff? Yeah. you can jump further down and down the yellow brick road of communication when it comes to that, right? We've all sat down with somebody, trying to think if I can think of a good example off the top of my head. It's like, oh, I've got a sense, I've got a feeling of one that I had recently. What was it? And I was just like, yeah, I get it. Okay, let's skip ahead, right? It was some marketing automation conversation. So you don't need to tell me about the basics on this one. You don't need to sell me on it. I get it. I got it. Good. Let's get down into the nitty gritty. Let's get down into the details. And it's very easy. And I've seen this. I have seen this at a scale that is even hard for me to communicate. I've worked in the channel at both Intel and Microsoft. The number of tech firms, product integrators, ISVs, distributors, you name it, from those who are building custom solutions to those who are selling other people's, the number of companies that I've worked with and the number of owners and marketers that I've spoken to, and salespeople, quite frankly, huge number of salespeople that I've spoken to, let alone the salespeople at the big companies I worked for, is you're gonna sell. You can throw a white paper up on the internet and you can sell to somebody, right? The question is that enough? And that is one of the big things that you start to bump into as a founder in Series A, right? And that's because even though this is something that's been, I obsessively track my time, and I realized I hadn't started my time tracker for when I started working on this marketing aspect for today. So that's why I'm very authentically being distracted by my phone over here, which I should probably put on Do Not Disturb, shouldn't I? Who cares? So I've seen this so many times, right? And it's like, yes, you'll sell to some people by throwing up a picture of a circuit board, right? You're going to get some people interested. It's okay. Some people are going to find that really interesting and will buy that because of that. But are they the only people you want to sell to? And at Series A to Series B, that is where the equation changes big time. There's all sorts of things I could say about what you can use to get to Series A, right? Part of that is having a great founder, I'm going to say pitch, okay? And that could be a founder story, founder narrative. It could be a James Cameron putting the S at the end of Aliens type of pitch when he was looking to get the funding to film Aliens. It could be all sorts of different elements, right? And of course, I like to think about the story, but I'm trying not to get too marred by the curse of knowledge on this one. So you've got a great pitch. So we'll just keep it at that, right? Great pitch, and you've identified something that needs fixing. Pat yourself on the back. Well done. Awesome. Fantastic. And probably a huge amount of work went into that, by the way. Never discount that. Some people get lucky. Most people, huge amount of work. And what got you there, right? Why did you sell? Like, who is it that you were selling to, right? When we think about any of what we're talking about, like throwing a circuit board up and selling that, right? We're thinking about the thing, the what, right? We're thinking about the who's buying it. We're thinking about the why they would want to buy it, how they're going to buy it, how they're approaching buying it, what they need, what problem they need to solve, all these kind of, what was it? My dad used to say, my five best friends and how, who, what, where, when, why, and how. And that 5 best friends and how equation, when you are selling innovation, again, I love innovation. Can't stress that enough, right? This is, we're not talking about selling brown sugary water here. We're talking about really interesting stuff that changes people's professional and personal lives even. And who you're selling to is vital, right? That person who sees the circuit board and buys it, boom, great, you sold it to them. This is my way of jumping into the Gordon Moore crossing the chasm point, something that I was literally, and I'm not joking when I say this, I'm not kidding, I'm not pulling your leg, but because my father worked at Intel from 1978 till the year he died, I was quite literally raised, and at certain points, literally in Silicon Valley. So I had my dad was an electrical engineer who worked in sales and marketing when he was at Intel. And I got exposed to all of the trends and the concepts and the ideas. And one of the things I remember from way back when it was first published, and I think it was still in the 80s at that point, was Crossing the Chasm. And my dad was obsessed with Crossing the Chasm. He couldn't get enough of it. He would talk about it at home. My dad would run family meetings, and we'd have to take ARs, action required. Later, when I eventually got a job at Intel, following in his footsteps, you might argue, I would then learn what AR stood for in a different way. But all jokes aside, he was living and breathing Intel culture, and that made its way into the house. And I remember Crossing the Chasm. And I loved it, and it made so much sense. This fascination I had with technology, and I was literally building computers as a 10-year-old, right? And the fascination of the fact that you could sell to people that got it. Some people, they were ahead, right? And they were visionaries. They were pushing the envelope. These aren't, and I'm not saying that these are just technical people. These could be business leaders who see an edge, well, that was an interesting effect. We just had some wackiness going on with the music there. They see an opportunity, and they see this cool thing, and they jump on it. And Moore talks about the not just the early adopters, but the innovators, the people who get it, who will just play with it and try and figure out what they can do with it. And then the early adopters who are like, okay, I'm going to find a business edge for this, right? And they're different, but they're very similar. In fact, the early adopters will look to the innovators. And I remember literally, Mark Lane actually worked for my father at one point, was an innovator. He was just pushing the envelope when it came to technology. God rest his soul. And he was a font of knowledge for people who cared about technology, right? So they would look to him as, Mark's going to know what's coming, right? Mark's going to know what's the next big thing's going to be. And so people like my father, who you could say, well, okay, maybe they're early majority, would then look to the innovators and spend time with them and figure out how they could take what those innovators were doing and apply it to get business, an edge in business, right? And that is our early markets. And when you're in Series A, that is who you are selling to. And it's still the case. These are not things that have changed. I mean, Moore has gone on to write about the horizons and how you can think about planning all of these things, but everything that he wrote in Crossing the Chasm still holds true to today. And the chasm, if you don't know, is actually, so we talked about the early adopters and the innovators kind of being close, right? The early adopters and the majority is different. So there's a gap between them. I still remember bringing this knowledge into I did a computer science and business degree. And so the business modules that I had, I remember sitting down with our marketing team and working on the marketing project and bringing in these concepts into that and talking about how we could integrate that into our thinking as a part of our marketing project. And this stuff is kind of like air, right? We still need air. It's still around. It's still valuable. Like electricity, it's still around. We still need it. And Crossing the Chasm is to innovators, to entrepreneurs, to technology, to selling, to marketing, as it has always been. And nobody has supplanted it with a better model. Comments in the chat if you think there's a better model, but I follow more on LinkedIn, and this is stuff that still holds true to today. Where am I going with this? Well, where I'm going with this is Series A to Series B is different, right? Series A, you got $26,000 a month monthly recurring revenue. Great. Okay. Series B, now you're looking at hockey sticking. You're looking at 150, 180 monthly recurring revenue. How do you get there, right? Well, you need to start to expand who's buying from you. No longer having the circuit board on the website is going to sell to enough people, right? That if you can actually look at the curves of these things, right? The amount of market that's available in the innovators and the early adopters is finite, right? And it's fairly small, whereas the majority then expands out. And that's where Moore talks about things like the tornado, the bowling alley. In fact, the bowling alley is first. And the bowling alley is pretty simple. It's like if you can get one pin, knock one pin over, hit that king pin, that correct pin, and then you'll get other pins falling over as well. Again, another lovely business analogy. One that always bothers me is targets. Now, even I think about it, it's like, who's our target for this campaign? But anyway, and now we've got bowling pins, knocking bowling pins over. Who are those? They're people. Weird. Okay. Anyway, but the point being is that if you can get the right pin, you get a knock-on effect. Why, though? Why do you get that? Well, the early majority don't look to the early adopters. They don't identify with them. They don't associate with them. They, in fact, in many ways, will see them as like wild and wacky. They'll look at the innovators as being the geeks, the dorks, the super techie tech heads, blah, 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 whatever. You know, if I'm putting my kind of commoner early majority random person hat on, and they would look, who do they see when they look at the innovators? They look at, whoa, these crazy brilliant entrepreneurs that can figure all this stuff out. I'm different to that. Like I'm pragmatic, or I'm very grounded. I've got important things to do. I've got important deadlines. I've got to, I want to be like tight and precise. I am waxing lyrical on this one. So, as much as I'd say, don't quote me, this is on the internet now. So there we go. But ultimately, a very different mindset. Okay. And I just described one of those particular mindsets. So if you're going to quote me, make sure you quote that bit too. So here we got these very different mindsets, and communicating to them is different because of that. The bowling pin is when you can actually get somebody in that market to get it. Then what you have is you have other people in the early majority looking to those people and saying, they look a bit like me. Hey, that CFO, they look a bit like me. That director of marketing, they look a bit like me. Oh, they're doing this. Oh, interesting. Maybe I should tap into this. And they're starting to see some proof. They're seeing this as something that's working. They're not looking for the innovative things to push things forwards. In this context, maybe they play golf and maybe they have the most advanced golf clubs in the world, or they fly model airplanes and they've got the latest, greatest motors in their personal life or different parts of their profession. But when it comes to this particular market that they're in, remember, what is a market? It's a somewhat similar group of people who have a somewhat of a need that you can solve and that they've got purchasing power to buy. And so people within a similar market to you, right? Like, that's why I said, like, director of marketing. I'm looking at the other director of marketing. Think about social media. Back in 2007, it was something that the director of marketing from any random firm would look to anybody doing it as either being an innovator or early adopter and not like themselves. But nowadays, it's a part of the repertoire, right? So it's crossed the chasm and it's spread. And as a founder of Series A, that is what you're trying to do. And so you need to talk differently to people. That is my long-winded introduction way of saying, let's go ahead and pick our victim for the week. Now, the long, rambling introduction, if you will, is important because it's the context for what we're going to see and how we're going to talk about it. And we're going to go into this looking at this website with a very balanced, very respectful perspective on the situation that this company finds himself in. So let's go ahead and share. So here we go. Okay, so we've got this is actually Upbound is the company, and Crossplane is the product. Okay, so here we are. When I look at a website, technology, right, I'm immediately starting to hunt for some key things. Maybe I'll zoom this in a bit, maybe that'll help. One of the things I'm looking for is people, right? I mean, it's a tech company, so I'm expecting there to be tech. And kind of my point on that one is, if you can tampen that down a bit, it's still going to be there. It's kind of like if you start with an extreme idea and dial back from it rather than the other way, trying to like build up to an innovative or a big creative idea, start with a big and wacky and then dial it back. Because here what we've got is we've got tech. We're going to dial it back. It's still going to be there, right? Crossplane is the cloud native framework for platform engineering. Cloud framework, platform engineering. You got to know what this is about, right? And one of the things that we talked about already today is who is going to be buying, right? And some of the people who are going to be buying, this will be absolutely fine, right? And they're probably already buying from you to a degree. And over time, there are going to be more of them that you can sell to, right? It doesn't actually change the fact that even as an engineer, you are a human being. And if you've listened to any of these streams before, you'll probably guess the next thing I'm going to say, and that is, what pain am I feeling as an engineer because of something that's going wrong that you're going to help me with, right? Like, if I told you that we could create, and we've seen these numbers, 40x engagement on a website because you approach it in the Go narrative way rather than the way you're doing it today, is that something that's solving a problem for you? Well, your series, in this case, it's their series B, and there is a degree of chasm crossing that has happened here. And not to go too far down the road of buying by committee, influencers, and not talking about like influencer marketing as you might think of it from a Instagram perspective, but influencer marketing in terms of people who are influencing within an account, and the Mark Lanes, for example, and having the ability to at least make sure you're consuming the early adopters, right? So innovators, early adopters, and that's a different slice, right, to the type of role. So it's a different slice to saying engineer versus business, right? There can be overlaps. Innovators and engineers, when it comes to cloud tech, yes, big overlap. But don't discount the fact that you do have business leaders who are these early adopters that are looking to the Mark Lanes of the world and who want to find something that's going to give them an edge, right? And so in this case, when we look at what Crossplane are doing, it is just pulling up some of my notes here as we've been doing as I was doing an analysis and a breakdown of these guys earlier. So when they launched in 2018, right, and this pretty they're pretty clear about this in their blog. I'll have it up here. They talk about crossplane blog. They announced crossplane 2.0, and they talk about how they try to do something. They honestly went to solve that problem, and then they realized, whoa, hold on a second. Actually, we want to do this. There's something else. There's something else here. There's something we need to do differently. And without going down into the details of that, I want to share what meta narrative it made me think of. And this was, so when my family and I travel, we like to plan it ourselves. And in fact, my partner loves to do that. She loves to plan the trip and research the locations and all that stuff, right? And then we tend to book through booking.com and hotels.com because of the experiences we've had through them, as opposed to the experiences that we've had through other brands. At one point, we were using Airbnb more, for example, and we'll book rental cars. So this summer, we were in Turkey, and we drove about 1,000 kilometers. We did Istanbul, Izmir, Ephesus, the Cappadocia, and it was bespoke, right? It was built from her passion and our family's passion for traveling and her fantastic organizing abilities. Some people don't like that. Some people like to buy a package holiday, right? I remember being back in the UK back in the day. I was at 18 to 30 holidays or something. They would sell these kind of cheesy party holidays, but everything was included, right? The flights were included, transportation to and from accommodation were included, accommodation was included, sometimes even some food was included. And so it's like switching from that to using your planning skills and a couple of these key resources, like the booking agencies, and getting a package that you love, right? Less rigid, more flexible. And so that's what Crossplane, that's what Upbound did with Crossplane /Crossplane 2.0. So they thought they were solving, and they talk about this, they thought they were making Kubernetes API, they were bringing that kind of elegance, or that simplicity, I should say, to infrastructure management. But what they ended up realizing is that it's kind of like they were building solutions, and they realized that they needed to go back and build the underlying system for it. And so it was a big shift, it was a big pivot. Another way you could kind of think about this from a meta narrative, and I was exploring the meta narratives that could work for this. Another one was like IKEA furniture, right? The difference between going out and buying a big piece, heavy, large, cumbersome piece of furniture versus flat pack, right? IKEA or some other brand, and putting it together yourself. Okay, so there's pros and cons to both. And that was another one. Was exploring the teach a person to fish one. That didn't really work because this is more about systems. And another one I was exploring was Lego, but that was too much of a kind of grab bag of pieces. It was more like, to me, it seemed more like chemistry, but those narratives were too abstract. I was thinking all the way along. I was thinking, what would it a PR worthy line be, right? And another way you could view this is, and this is like, pick an adjacent industry, like to help like juxtapose and tell the the story of what's happening, right? Kind of like a little story hack, a little brain hack. And that would be something like they stopped trying to be a restaurant and became the kitchen supplier. So restaurant meals, here are the meals that we're making. Kitchen supplier, here's everything you need to cook the meals. So you think, wait, hold on a second, hold on. What do we mean by that? I've got a friend, Jeremy, shout out to you, who has worked in the restaurant industry for a long time. He's chef, executive chef, corporate chef, ran franchise businesses, managed kitchens, built mobile kitchens, food trucks. And so what do we mean when we think about stop being a restaurant and being a supplier? And there's a few nuances on the supply. You could say maybe you're the intermediary, and that's kind of more what this is, right? Because it's like the other technology exists that we're looking to create the cross connection across these different clouds, and ultimately that relationship to cross plane. And if we zoom in a little bit, if you cared to poke around at all on their verbiage, but if we stick with the simple idea of the kitchen supplier, you're going from being somebody who's a restaurant, who's delivering some meals, to being somebody who is enabling all of these restaurants. And in this case, it was like, oh, we thought that we were a restaurant, but we realized actually what the market needed. They didn't need another restaurant. They needed a better kitchen supplier for the kitchens. And those kitchens, like in back of restaurants, there is some hardcore gear, right? From the Viking ranges to the Sub-Zero freezers, and all of those are probably like old news now in that industry, right? They're probably next level coolness, no pun intended. And that's what we're talking about when we look at what these guys have been going through. And so we look to the website, right? We look at the top of the website. We look at the blog. We look at some of the others, like this is their corporate page. Here they're talking about companies with commercial offerings in the space. We look at what they're saying. So this company is a seasoned adopter of cross-plane and live environments, brings a wealth of daily users expertise to your cross-plane project with extensive experience. So there's some stuff in here, some of the social proof stuff that we're going to expect to see. But we're not seeing for starters, anything that was mentioned in the blog. We're not seeing that connection, right? We're not seeing this as being part of the same thing, apart from this brand being mentioned, right? So what does that mean? It means missed opportunity. It means missed opportunity to tie this together to make it cohesive. Remember we said about buying by committee earlier? Well, what happens when the committee is having to do their homework and go out and look at Crossplane's website? Is it a cohesive message? Is it crystal? What's landing? Let alone, you expect me to say the words story and narrative, let alone that there's a story that's tying all these things together, right? And we also had a look at some of the documentation. It's like, there's opportunity here to make these connections. And remember when I said about technologists also being human beings, and we were talking about the landing page, the homepage, right? Well, what are the struggles? If we're talking about, we figured it out. They're not a restaurant, or yeah, they're a restaurant. We're not a restaurant. We're not helping them make the dishes. We're selling them the equipment, the right equipment for the right size restaurant, literally and figuratively. So the right gear, but also the actual right size gear that fits in this restaurant kitchen versus this restaurant kitchen versus this restaurant kitchen, and so on. And why did that problem exist, right? Upbound figured it out. They figured out, oh, this is why. And they talk about it in the blog. They talk about some of the challenges that folks run into, I think it was down here, problem we set out to solve. So I think that was the V1. So say, well, this is what we set out to solve, but then this does this stuff, right? And therefore, and things get harder or they break, right? And more complex. And so therefore we're moving away from that. Now we're starting to do this. And we're now resetting. And this is what Slack did this with Slack Connect. Dropbox did this when they started to move into the enterprise. And Dropbox thought they solved the making file sharing easy problem, but with enterprise, it's a governance problem, right? And scale problem. So this is not a unique narrative problem that these folks went through. This is a very real, you may be going through this challenge as well. And so they go down through this, right? And oh no, you can do it this way. What's missing from this, and is definitely missing from this, is, okay, we heard the word complexity, but we didn't feel who is feeling this. And there's no emotive language. And it doesn't have to be over the top. In fact, it shouldn't be. But it needs to have the right reality around it. Otherwise, it's a fairy tale. And in this case, it's a technology fairy tale, right? Well, I mean, I'm using the word tale liberally, but without those specifics, we don't feel it. And if we don't feel it, and we're on the buying committee, or worse, have been delegated to go and solve whatever problem it is that is at hand, and then we come across this website because of our search and the SEO worked and it landed us on this web page, but we're not feeling the problem that our CISO or CTO told us to solve, and somebody else is, that becomes a problem, right? And this is all very technical. It's, as I went through and I did a teardown here, right, I was thinking about things like, I went a bit old school. I was thinking about pagers buzzing, but I was thinking about the Slack as a pager, right? Slack message. Like we've all heard the stories of somebody that's, or have lived it ourselves, the hell of Slack messages or emails. Like, oh, I love it. Solve the email problem with another problem. But what that causes, right? That anxiety, that causes fear of making mistakes, of being the bottleneck, right? And the lack of predictability, the lack of vision for what we can do. And we're not seeing any of that on here. And that's stuff that can then be used across all of these things at the right altitude, right? And it absolutely respects the technologist, because it's about the technologist who's doing the job. And it's human language. So when that delegate to the CISO comes along and is seeing if you guys have got what it takes to help solve that problem, there's that hook too. And it's crystal clear. All we have here is we have features, we have functionality, and we don't even have outcomes. It lets you do this. These are features, right? There's nothing about the people that are involved. And you know me, I love talking about the 3Ds of story, and it's because story is our operating system, right? If you want to get techie about something for a second, it's like the world around us, like we're plonking ourselves in, we're simulating it, right? Taking all the inputs from the sight and the sound and all the senses, and we're building this world out and we're plonking ourselves in it, and we've got to go and figure it out, right? And we want stuff, right? We're thirsty, we're hungry, we want a mate, we want to make money, we want a cool car, we want a nice house, we want to have a good job. We want to solve the problems in the job. We want to deal with this thing that is cropped up, right? Constantly wanting things, and that can be a positive one, or it can be, eliminating a problem. And in this case, what is that? Who are we talking to, and what do they want? Do they want reliability? Do they want control? Do they want fewer Slack buzzes in the middle of the night? And then what's standing in the way of that, right? So as we figured out who it is that we're talking to, and we figured out what they want, now the real fun starts, because this is where you play. This is where, in the example that we're using today, that upbound play, but this goes for your playground too, right? And that is the challenges that stand in the way. And you know what those are, right? You know that in this case, we're talking about maybe it's scripts and piecemeal tools, and approvals that aren't getting done, people who are on call getting burnt out, and not having the budget to hire enough people, right? That's a very real pain right now. Yeah. Tap into it, use it. It's there for the grabbing. This is why we do what we do, why I love this stuff, because it's about connecting all these pieces of the world together in the right way, right? It's why I talked about IKEA furniture today, right? It's why I talked about restaurants. These are things we get, things we understand. And when we talk about the audit sting, it resonates. And then we can say, okay, how do we help you untangle that knot? And then we can present that. So you don't end up losing every little feature that you talk about, but you present them in a way that is delicious to consume and simple, right? Which is what Upworthy, Upbound, and Crossplane set out to do when it comes to cross cloud systems. And then we can take that on each of the pages. We can go to, like, on the homepage, we could say, like, stop 2 a.m. Slack pages, and give your teams for app and infrastructure the one API that the system reconciles before anyone reaches for that Slack channel, right? Have some proof bullets from some social proof. And then why control planes? Here we go on the future. Why use control planes to build? Why use Crossplane to build control planes? Friday, 4 p.m. A change merge, traffic dips, root cause hides in a script. A control plane tracks desired state and fixes the hiccup. Your policy and quotas live in the API, so changes are safe and fast. Now, this is all pretty high level stuff based on what's available to us. Obviously, when we do this for reals, we dig in and get the stuff from behind the scenes so we can make sure that things are getting put together in the right way. But the point being is, you're still contextually communicating, right? Yeah, I use the word API, but we're talking to people in a language they understand, and the language they understand is also what they feel, right? It's not just the APIs. Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, gotta fix my APIs today. That's the second thing, right? The first thing is like, another stressful day of all these problems. I'm trying to get my manager off my back because of the APIs or whatever, right? Even in the docs section, we can bring in we could have like a one-liner. You want predictable releases and quiet on-call. Crossplane is a control plane framework that lets you design the API your teams use, rather than this empty calories, all of this. I mean, you got to educate them on what this is, right? That's the problem with the curse of knowledge, is you end up there's always more knowledge required for the curse of knowledge. And that's why crystallizing and communicating in a human way and giving them the breadcrumbs to take those next steps. The commercial page could be changed. Oh, I should probably share my screen again for you. The commercial page could be changed. We could do, the logos don't have to go completely, but we could focus on outcomes, right? Need to rush this into production without waking your team. These partners have shipped cross-plane control planes, tuned for audits, upgrades, and scale. Even something like that at the top. Here they are. This is like somebody's checking a box, right? Get the commercial page up with the partners. And like I said at the beginning, I've worked with a lot of partners, so I know what this is like having to do this stuff. The blog, we could have, where's the blog? We could have standardized openers, right? We could have a template for the first 2 paragraphs. We could say, name the scene. We've been talking about what those scenes could look like, right? The Slack buzzing off the hook, so to speak, to mix metaphors in a sentence. Name the feature in a sentence and show what a 6-line YAML or CLI that proves it. And that could be a way of this blog. I guess we're forward because we went from this to the blog. So here we go. And in that case, you can imagine how these would, this is the one that we just looked at. You can imagine how the first paragraph could look if we had that 3-bullet structure or that 3-element structure. Framework, shall I say? Things we'll talk about frameworks with Crossplane. And whereas this is bragging rights. I mean, yes, it's a proof point, and I'm sure there's a gold badge for it somewhere. But name the scene, name the feature, and show a piece of the tech, right? Again, this is high level without upbound and crossplanes input. This is like we pick these folks to go in and pick on because we know that you can be better. We know that you can find a way to create your homepage that is going to engage more. And this stuff works. This has been proven. We've got data that backs this up, let alone the fact that there's immediate data that we've got as Go narrative, but the proof immemorial that crystal clarity, engaging at a human level, leading people on the journey, you're going to get more people to buy. And you need that as you grow from Series A to B. And it doesn't stop when you go from B to C, like our friends here, Crossplane, are having to do. Make sense, right? All the way back to the beginning. I love this stuff. I love looking at web pages like this and exploding with ideas on questions I have about who has the pain, who's buying for the pain. And those aren't necessarily the same thing. And what the tech does, why it does it, how it fits into the big picture, and all of those things, and looking at that and saying, okay, this isn't doing all it could do. It's not lifting all it could lift. It's only lifting a very small piece of it. And for growth, and not even growth just for money and market share and investment, but getting more people using your stuff. I mean, that's why you're in this game. That's why I'm in this game. I might be building communications and stories and narratives, but we're all building something that we know can help other people. And that growth is a backwards looking indicator of having successfully shown people that you can help them live a better life. I love that. Growth is a backwards looking indicator of having shown people that you can help them lead a better life. And that's what technology is all about. And it's just constant, right? Because we solve this problem, just like we looked at with a cross-plane example. Oops, actually, we figured out there's this problem here. And you know what? That's okay, because we wouldn't have figured that out if we hadn't tried to do this thing. So that's beautiful. It's absolutely, there's no end of this for all of us. For you who's building the technology, building the products, pushing the innovation envelope, which I love, right? Like I said at the beginning, right? That's why I have this. Even though it's only back there as a bookshelf, I've thought about putting this back there to use it to prop up some of my diaries. I keep a handwritten diary every day and have done since February 14th, 1990. And I prototyped it before then, 86, 87, 88, 89. And there's a lot of them back there. And I often think about using this to prop them up, but I just love having this here to remind me of the physical, and to physically ground me, because it's heavy, the stone that it is, it represents the technology that I love working with, right? And whether that's something I built or invented, or it's something that you built or invented, I know there's always a better way to communicate about it. There's always a better way for us to push the envelope forward, to communicate to more people, to communicate differently, to then get more people to understand how you can help them. And if all we ever do is talk in features and capabilities and technology, we're only ever going to lift up one part of who we can help. And I want to help you lift up more. And we do that by connecting as people, as humans, right? Even in this world of AI and exploding technology, at the end of the day, what it's all about is about you, me, you and your team, your tribe, your friends, your family, me and my team, my fam, friends and tribe, connecting in all sorts of different ways. And when it comes to getting your products out there into the world, finding ways to do that are going to push the envelope and are going to help you, like we said, about growth, give you that backwards looking indicator, knowing that you've helped even more people. So thank you so much. This has been really fun. I don't think we had any more questions, but we do these generally. Sometimes we don't, but we do these on Fridays, and we talk about the right tools. We've talked about those today. This, ain't no fluffy storytelling here. We're about the real, the practical, the pragmatic of how we put these things to use. And I would encourage you to don't just go to the website, which you can do, but I would encourage you to send us an email or send me a LinkedIn DM. I read them all because I want to hear how you're trying to lift up more of the people you know that you can help. I want to hear how you've tried connecting and solving what we've talked about today. So you can shoot that email over. And we've got some resources up on the website, but we're in the process of making some marketing operations changes. And the best way right now to get connected is to connect on the email or on LinkedIn DM. And we do have a bunch of resources up on the website as well. So feel free to go in and check those out. But all of this is about helping you go faster as a Series A founder, getting to Series B. That's who we're 100% passionately working with nowadays. And we've also got friends still in corporate and on a few other sides of the startup world, because all the problems we're talking about here have wings that fly far beyond just Series A to Series B. But I love Series A to Series B because of the chasm, because of that challenge. And so if you're having that type of challenge, trying to get out, stand out, reach more people, and you're struggling, not quite sure how to clarify it, how to align your team, how to package this in a way that your investors will understand and say, I get it. I see why you're able to get from, or you will be able to get from 26 100,000 MRR to 186,000, the way that you have communicated that, the way you shared that, the story that you have told, and the stories you understand in your market and how you're going to connect with those people, all of the stuff we've been talking about today, by the way, yes, we get it, and we want to invest in you. That is the crux of it. And that's it for today. So thank you so much for joining. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say and what challenges you're bumping into. And I'll leave you with this little piece of info so you can go ahead and grab everything